Hi, I'm Scott Humphrey, CEO of the World Floor Covering Association, and this is Leadership Live. And this week on Leadership by the Letter, we've moved to the letter M, and the word is mentor. Now, I typically share with you a definition of the word, but I really didn't like the definitions I found for mentor. So I've created one that I think will help you understand where we're going in this talk today. Here's my definition of mentor: one who uses their acquired knowledge and experience to shape and improve the life of another. Let me say it again. One who uses their acquired knowledge and experience to shape and improve the life of another. Now, from a mentoring standpoint, there is both a formal way to mentor and an informal way. Let me hit the informal first. Yesterday in our WFCA Grow Group, I'll talk more about that in just a moment, I threw out the question, what is a mentor? Here are some other words they came up with: teacher, coach, parent, pastor, influencer. And I really like the word influencer because it hits both the informal and the formal aspect of mentoring. So from an informal standpoint, an author that you love reading that really inspires you and challenges you to make changes in your life could be a mentor. A speaker that you enjoy listening to could be that. A pastor, as we mentioned before. But there are many ways that people can influence you. So therefore, they, in a sense, could be a mentor to you in an informal basis. From a formal basis, the type of mentoring, there really are three. First, you can have a face-to-face mentor relationship where you sit down in an office or you sit down across a table at a meal with somebody and you ask questions and you hold them accountable and you share your life experiences, your story, both the positives and the negatives, and what you have learned from both. Then second, there is a remote mentor relationship, really made popular during COVID. And that means that you can join somebody by FaceTime or simply by phone call and do the same thing. Ask a series of questions, share your life, pour yourself into them, and that is a remote mentor relationship. Formal, but remote. And then the last type of formal type of mentor relationship is what we would call a group mentor relationship. And that's where these grow groups come in. So the WFCA created these grow groups because we really focus on the success of independent flooring retailers. And so we look at every aspect of what helps people succeed in that venue. And we have grow groups on retail. We have grow groups on leadership, which is the one I lead. We have one we'll be starting on women in leadership in the flooring industry, and many more coming by the end of this year. I hope you'll get poured into one of those. GROW stands for Growing Retail in Our World. However you do mentor relationships, it's important that you're involved, not only to be a mentor, which you should be, it's a responsibility in leadership, but also to have a mentor. You never outgrow the need to have somebody pour their life into you. Again, that can be informal through reading, but it can also be a formal relationship where you find somebody within your industry or outside that you admire and say, listen, could I take you to lunch? Could I just ask you some questions? I want to glean from your experience. Let me tell you an example of how that played out. In the 1968 Olympics, Bob Beamon shattered the long jump world record. Beamon was kind of a favorite going into it. There was really a Russian gentleman who was expected to win the gold, but Beamon was expected to medal. And then Ralph Boston, who had become Bob Beamon's informal coach, had stepped in too. And he had, now listen, Boston was phenomenal himself. He's 8 years older, but he had broken the world record numerous times by an average of about 2.5 inches each time. So in the qualifiers, the day before the finals, Bob Beamon faults his first 2 times at the long jump. In other words, he stepped over the line, so the jump didn't count. If he misses the 3rd time, he doesn't even make it to the finals, and history has changed forever. But Ralph Boston, his coach, walks up to him and says, listen, take off early. All you got to have is a solid jump. It kind of takes the fear and the pressure off of him. And Beamon does exactly that. He has a solid jump. It's not a great jump, but it's a solid jump, and it gets him through to the finals the next day. When the finals open the next day, Ralph Boston has already jumped, who ends up, by the way, going on and getting the bronze medal. The gentleman from Russia has jumped, and he ends up getting the silver medal, and it is Bob Beamon's turn to jump. Now, if you watch the video of this, and it's hard to find this version, but Beamon is on the track, standing there, and Ralph Boston walks up to him. Now, both of them knowing the history from the day before with Beamon faulting, Ralph Boston simply walks up. Beamon is focused down the track. He doesn't even acknowledge that Boston says these words until years later. And Boston looks into his eyes, whispers in his ear, take off 2 inches early, and you'll fly 2 feet further. And that is exactly what happened. Bob Beamon went on to shatter the world record. In fact, the previous world record was 27 feet, 4 3/4 inches. Bob Beamon jumped 29 feet, 2.5 inches. That's right, almost 2 feet further. In fact, it was so far that the optical device that they had brought in to measure could not measure that far. They had to go and find an old-fashioned tape measure. It took 20 minutes to get the actual distance, and they found out that Beamon had blown this away. What caused that? I don't know. I can tell you this. Beamon never jumped that far again, not even close to it. But Ralph Boston, his mentor, his coach, said something to him that took some pressure off and inspired him to look at that jump differently. That's your job as a leader, to inspire, to pour yourself into through both your successes and your failures. Be a mentor, have a mentor, and invest in the next generation. Create your legacy now and go out there and lead.